my father could not stop talking about his experiences in the concentration camps.
Isn't that rare? Usually we hear that people who were through the camps, you really had to pry the information out of them.
It's, I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of survivors, and what I've discovered is that generally in a family there'll be one person who's the storyteller, and the other people will be the people who don't tell the story. It's as if each family chooses a person to continue that story, to tell that story, to move that story from the present into the future. And my dad was the person who took on that responsibility. You couldn't get him to stop talking about his experiences.
How did they wind up in the camps? They were Christians.
Yeah.
And were the Christians treated any differently from the Jews in the Nazi concentration camps?
My father, both my parents were taken into Germany by the Germans. My father was taken in 1940. My dad was a farm boy in western Poland, the area closest to Germany. And what the Germans were trying to do was to move Poles out of that area and free it up for what they called living room for the Germans to move in. And so my father was taken in 1940 to Buchenwald concentration camp. My mother was in eastern Poland, and eastern Poland had been controlled by the Russians for the first couple of years of the war. And then the Germans invaded that section, and when they invaded that section, they gathered up people like my mother. In terms of where the Christians and the Jews treated differently, my father used to say that Buchenwald, where he was not a death camp. He said it was a slow death camp, and every year about 1 out of 4 people died because of brutality, starvation, just one terrible thing after another.
And your parents met at Buchenwald?
At the very end of the war, my father was on a death march away from Buchenwald, and the Germans who were guarding him and the fellows he was with walked past another camp where my mother was, and I asked, I talked to my parents about this stuff all the time, and I said to my father, "What was it like when you and Mom met at the door of this concentration camp where she was a prisoner?" And my father said, "First we had something to eat, and then we got married." And I asked my mother about that, and she said, "Oh, no, let me tell you the real story about what happened." And her story was quite different. And one of the pleasures for me in listening to my parents' story was listening to both of their stories and listening to the sort of the sort of contradictions and the sort of complexities that they offered to the story.